hopefully you can share our PowerPoint. Patrick's going to drive. Welcome, everybody. It's good to have you tonight. I'm Superintendent Dave Haglund, and my team and I are going to present some information, and then we are going to provide an opportunity for questions that you've already started to populate. And hopefully some of those questions we're going to answer as we go through the presentation. And then when we get to the Q&A period, we'll skip to questions that we don't feel already got tended to. So tonight's discussion will include an update relating to the county guidance. We're going to review our reopening document and the related checklist, introduce you to our new dashboard. We're going to review some instructional considerations and then talk some about our planning process and next steps for reopening the elementary schools. Next slide, Patrick. And this presentation can be made available to you. It'll be posted on our website after we're done. And the reason why I say that is because throughout the presentation, there's a plethora of links that I think would take you to some pretty helpful information if you've not already had a chance to review it. So as we've talked about before, this is a very fluid situation. We are relying on the Alameda County Public Health Department in collaboration with the Alameda County Office of Education and the guidance that they have provided since the beginning. And one of their guidance documents, I think we're on version 17, which shows you that we're about 17 weeks into this process because they update the guidance about once a week on Thursdays usually. So we shifted to the red tier and then ultimately to the orange tier, during which time the Alameda County Public Health Department let us know that it was okay for us to start reopening those elementary schools as of October 13th. Subsequent updates have even lent to the opportunity for considering reopening of secondary schools. That will not be the focus of our conversation tonight. This is just for our elementary parents. So we appreciate that there are questions about secondary schools, and we hope to have another session for secondary parents sometime in the near future. On October 29th, the Pleasanton Unified School Board did approve our reopening document and our checklist. Those were submitted and subsequently approved by the Alameda County Office of Education, and they cleared us for reopening schools beginning on January 4th. Next slide, Patrick. I think we're going to just briefly review the two documents that are, one of them is new, the other you may have seen already. The document on the list, Patrick, if you would click into that, that is our reopening plan that was submitted to the County Office of Education and the Public Health Department. This is available on the district's website. If you go to the district's website on the very front page, there's a box that'll pop up right at the beginning, and it will take you to a page where you can click the link on this booklet. So Patrick, just click through it real quickly so folks can kind of see how the document is structured. And there are live links within the document. And so please feel free to review this document. It's largely related to safety protocols and other items that were a part of the county's checklist, which I believe we talked about the last time we were together. Let's go back to the presentation, Patrick. In an effort to try to help folks see exactly where we're at in the process, we've created a reopening dashboard. So Patrick, click on that image. This is also available on the district website. There you go, Patrick, thank you. And you'll note that all the areas that were discussed in the reopening document are also a part of the dashboard, including indicators as to our progress towards achieving the goals. The green checkbox means we're ready. The yellow boxes means we're in progress. And then there's a couple of other icons that are important. The plus mark indicates a step that we're taking beyond what the county required. And the little link icons that are to the right of the words, those are important for us because they indicate areas of our plan that we can't do by ourselves. It's gonna take collaboration with our parents and the local community to make sure that those steps are implemented effectively. All of our goal is the same, and that's to open and keep schools open in a safe way. And we know we can't do that by ourselves. It's going to take all of us together. So back to the presentation, Patrick, and I think now we're going to hand it over to Mr. D'Alazzo.
Thank you, Dr. Haglund. Good evening, Pleasanton community. Thanks for joining us tonight. So I'm going to reference a couple or highlight a couple of items that are in the reopening plan in the next couple of slides. So one of the items I want to talk about first, each district in Alameda County, we're required to designate a school district person and school site person who are what we call district COVID liaisons. And so the Pleasanton Unified School District has designated 3 district office administrators to be the liaisons to Alameda County Public Health. So we received some training about 3 weeks ago, and essentially the county trained us to be prepared and have the items regarding the steps that we would need to take should there be an illness or a positive case on our campus that we would need to follow should that occur. So the 3 district COVID liaisons are myself, Kathleen Reif, and Leslie Heller, and they all work in the Student Services Department. Along with that, each school site has a school site COVID liaison. And so we've identified 2 staff members from each school site who will serve as the school site liaison. And the flow of communication essentially will be if there's an incident where there is a student or a staff member who is ill, then the school site liaison would communicate that to the district liaisons who would then communicate the information to Alameda County Public Health. There are very specific steps that we would need to take in order to go through that process. The other item I want to talk briefly about is the opportunity for Pleasanton to provide monthly COVID testing to all of our staff members. And so the recommended timeline for testing for all staff is 1 time per month. So Alameda County Public Health has made a recommendation to school districts in the county, if they choose, that we would participate in a testing program for that 1 time a month for all employees. So at this time, we are going to bring a contract to our school board on November 12th, during the November 12th meeting, to talk about a contract with a Curative Labs, which is a vendor who would help us to provide that testing. The logistics of that testing have not been developed yet. Like I said, when we bring it to the board for their review and their approval, hopefully, then we can start planning for how that would look logistically. We have some ideas of how that would look in terms of centralized testing, timelines, and how we would do that testing for our staff. Students are not required by Alameda County Public Health to be tested by the school districts. So our plan right now is to provide the testing for our staff. Next page, Patrick. So as part of the required training for COVID liaisons is to understand and implement the procedures for staff and students should there be an illness on our campus or district, and should there be a positive case in our district. These are the particular steps that we would need to follow. So in the guidelines, as Dr. Haglund mentioned earlier, we're in version 17. This is a live link. So if you download this presentation, and if you click on that blue section there, says COVID-19 School Guidance Alameda County, that'll open to the Alameda County guideline, which has all of this information. There's a lot of information. This is part of the training that I mentioned a few minutes ago that we provided to all of our site COVID liaisons and to other staff members. Our school nurses are also a big part of our training and our work with our students. And so they are all registered nurses and bring a lot of expertise into our planning. But just briefly, the 6 scenarios that are in this guidance plan that are really important for us to know and to be able to implement are listed here. So essentially, we want to be prepared should there be a student or staff member who exhibits symptoms, who answers yes to the health screening. There's a health screening questionnaire that we will be providing to staff and students upon their return, and then also a temperature check. There's also procedures should a staff member or student have somebody in their household who has contracted COVID-19. procedures for when a student or staff member is positive, and then also if somebody is symptomatic, what are the procedures if somebody wants to return back to school because they have a negative test. So you can feel free to open up that document and read this section. It's a 4-page section in this document. And again, it's very detailed. And these are the steps that we have been learning and been training on to implement once our students and staff return. Next page, Patrick. Okay, just yesterday, the health officers from the 10 Bay Area counties issued a joint recommendation for travel and gatherings during the holidays. So these are the recommendations from, again, the health officers from all of the counties to help prevent and mitigate the risk for future exposure, especially during the holiday season. So those 2 links there in blue are live links, and they are the recommendations from the 10 Bay Area counties, as I mentioned. With that said, I wanted to highlight their recommendations. And so the first recommendation is essentially to avoid travel during the holidays. In the document, you will read their rationale for that. The spread and transmission is greater if community travels. And so their recommendation is to avoid travel during the holidays, and really non-essential travel is not recommended. Now, if families and staff choose to travel outside of the Bay Area, it is strongly recommended that they impose a self-quarantine for 14 days. Now, Pleasanton Unified School District is not requiring a 14-day quarantine, but the county is strongly recommending a self-quarantine. So we would fall in line with that. So should you travel outside the Bay Area, that is the strong recommendation, is to self-quarantine. Don't travel if you're sick. Follow the guidelines to help reduce risk. And if you do travel, plan ahead. And there's some questions here that you should consider, again, from the travel guidance from the counties, should you choose to travel. Most important thing is, if you do travel, to just be aware of where you're going, who you're traveling with, what are there greater risks for when you travel, and then when you do return, follow those 14-day quarantine guidelines regarding your symptoms or monitoring should you have symptoms. For gatherings, it's pretty straightforward. Keep the gatherings safe, keep them small, gather for short periods of time. I believe the guidance right now from the county or from the state is a 2-hour limit. It's in, again, the links there, but 2-hour limit for periods of time, and then to keep them stable, meaning don't travel from many different cohorts or different venues should you choose to gather during the holidays. So again, wanted to reference those for your information, but feel free to click in to those links. Next, Patrick. Okay, and so this website, again, that blue section there is the Alameda County Public Health Department dashboard. And as Dr. Haglin mentioned, we are tracking as best as we can information from our local county public health department. Right now, this snapshot here on the right is a snapshot of this website, and the county is currently in tier 3 status, which is the orange status there on the right. And you could see the metrics as to how a county would move into either the yellow zone or into a more restrictive red zone. But right now we are in the orange. And some of the metrics you can find on here are the current case rates, the positivity rate, the Healthy Places Index, which is the positivity rate for certain areas and sections of Alameda County that are lower socioeconomic status. And then there are other metrics as well, but I wanted to reference you to this website as a place that we go to gather information. Okay, I think that's it for me, Patrick. Okay, I'll stop there and I'll turn it over to our Assistant Superintendent of Business, Mr. Ahmed Sheikh Holaslami.
Thank you, Ed. Good evening, community members and staff. So in terms of safety, we've done a lot of work in terms of procuring the required PPE. All our staff have been provided with cloth face masks and face shields, in addition to job-specific PPE. For students who do return, the district will provide them with 2 pairs of cloth face masks. Students obviously are required to come to school with face masks, but if a student does forget their face mask, or if there's an issue, we will have disposable face masks available for students. We have ensured to make sure our soap dispensers are filled, and throughout the school common areas and inside the classrooms, we do have hand sanitizers that will be available for student use. Additionally, each school site has a PPE coordinator, and as needed, they can request additional PPE for staff and students. Next slide, please. So we have created a process for making sure our school sites are clean and disinfected on a regular basis. Currently, our staff are doing that for our current cohort programs and staff who are working at our school sites. And so that will include high touch points are cleaned regularly, bathrooms and common areas are cleaned daily, and in the classrooms, we'll have a plan to clean the high touch points between the cohort changes, and also at the day's end to make sure that all the desks and other areas are also disinfected. And so, you know, in a typical classroom, we're going to work with our staff at the sites and our administrators to arrange them so that students and the teachers and staff are always 5 to 6 feet apart from each other. And so that's something that we'll be working with our staff in the weeks to come, make sure it's ready all for January. And we're obviously going to reduce communal use of classroom areas. Is going to be a different classroom setting than what we're used to. We'll also develop a checklist that will be regularly posted in the classrooms for daily cleaning when the custodians go through that. The next slide, please. An area where we have invested a great deal of time and also resources has been to check our ventilation systems throughout the school district. So we've had a contractor go through every school site and check the HVAC system, make sure that its maximum air is being allowed into the system. Teachers can continue to obviously open doors and windows to increase fresh air. We have also upgraded the 90% of the elementary school HVAC units with the recommended MERV 13 filters, and the remaining will be updated before school reopens. Additionally, you know, the programs will be programmed to run, so they're moving air throughout the school hours. We have also in the process of procuring and purchasing air purifiers. They'll be in each of the classrooms to provide an additional layer of safety when it comes to the air quality in classrooms. And in our district office or school offices, we'll be introducing what is called a needle point bipolar ionization system, which will help improve the air quality and reduce the potential for coronavirus particles. So that is a lot of work that's been occurring in the background, and we'll have those ready for when the students return. Next slide, please. So many in our community have taken advantage of our child nutrition services, which is providing meal pickup currently at our 7 locations. And so starting January in the hybrid mode, our drive-throughs will be at the elementary schools only. So the PMS and Harvest Park will close, and that will allow our staff to operate providing meals at the elementary schools. For the AM students, it'll be you pick up through the drive-through, and then for the afternoon students, they can be dropped off, eat lunch at the school in a designated area with social distancing in place, and then go into their classrooms. And for community and for our middle schools and high schools, they can pick up the meals through the drive-throughs at the 9 campuses. Next slide, please. Another area where we have invested a lot of our resources and time is to ensure our staff have the adequate technology to support both remote and hybrid teaching and learning. And so early on in this process, we made sure all our students had access to Chromebooks. And in the remote setting, things have worked really well. However, as we come to the hybrid teaching mode, we realize that additional devices and equipment will be made. So we're working with our administrators to make sure those are available and have them in the hands of our staff for the hybrid learning. Our transportation services are up and running, and you've probably seen our buses picking up and dropping off students in the community, and that will continue. And based on our need, we'll obviously be social distancing in the buses as well. So if we have a greater need, we may tap into outside services as needed. So that's pretty much for operational services. So at this point, I'm going to turn it over to our Assistant Superintendent of Teaching and Learning, Dr. Woodward.
Thank you so much. And good evening, families. We're very glad to have you with us this evening. So let's go back in time to July when we did our initial parent choice confirmation form. And at that point in time, this data is approximated because it does differ by site, but overall reflects generally what happened in the summer with our data. We had 88% of our families that selected that they would want to have their students come to school in the hybrid model. Well, about 12% selected the elementary at home. And this is just for elementary schools, of course. So then, as you know, we recently reissued a similar survey and asked our parents to tell us, given now how the situation has changed with the pandemic, how comfortable would you be sending your child back to school in the hybrid model or at home? And as you can see from the shift in the data, we now have 62% of our students coming back in the hybrid model and 38% wanting to stay home. So it was definitely a decrease in the amount of students coming back and an increase in the amount of students that would be doing remote learning from home. And we did ask that families would commit to having their student in this placement for the rest of the year. And as I continue with my presentation this evening, I'll explain a few reasons why that's so and what happens if families do change their minds. Next slide, please, Patrick. Thank you. So because in August, we grouped our students in classes based upon their selections, whether they would be at home or hybrid. And at home students were clustered so that when we would start coming back to school, those students would be clustered in a group and it would make it more manageable. However, based on the recent parent choice confirmation data, we now find that we have at-home students in nearly every classroom. So as you can see, this requires us to think differently about how we will approach the instructional models at each elementary school. And in order to accommodate recent parent choice, some class changes will be necessary because our students are already together in these groupings. And now with the shifts, it may not be possible to accommodate every student staying with their teacher and also the options that the parents now would like to have for their students. But we are making every effort to do that so that there is minimal disruption. But the impact of that is that grade level teams with the principals will determine the instructional models within the AM/PM schedules. Our principals have shared with the teachers the most recent data, and we know that our teachers love their students and they're doing everything they can to try to support them, but we also have to consider the instructional impact and the safety if we have large cohorts that could be coming back at the same time, even within the AM/PM. So there are some factors we need to navigate. And so we're being very, very attentive to using a thorough process in making that. So please just know if there are changes to your child's classroom teacher, it's being made because that is the option that is available at the site based upon how that data ended up for that grade level team. And as well, Wednesdays will remain asynchronous with the current schedule, and students for hybrid would be coming back in the AM or the PM on Mondays, Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Friday. And then on Wednesdays, there would be that one synchronous session via Zoom or Google Hangout. Next slide, please. So there are some additional impacts, and I'd like to just go through those right now. As I mentioned earlier, our goal is to accommodate the updated choices of families regarding selecting hybrid or at home. I did indicate that this may, on some cases, result in class changes, although we're trying to minimize that. Again, since data is showing up differently at each site and grade level, the instructional models will be site-specific within the AM and PM adopted plan. There are some schools in which less than 50% of the students will be coming back in person. And there are other schools in which over 77% of the students will be coming back in person. And that also varies based upon the grade level. So there is a need for differentiation. As well, placement in the AM, PM cohorts will be determined by the site. We are making it a priority to place siblings in the same cohorts as much as possible. And also students who are receiving special services according to their IEP or busing would also be grouped together. And then, as we always do at the beginning of every year when creating our class lists, we want to ensure that our cohorts are balanced based upon instructional needs and the model. Instruction and access to teachers will be different. One of the things we have to realize is that as we come back into in-person instruction, our teachers are teaching face-to-face live now with students. Therefore, the schedule for remote learning must also be adjusted, because the teaching that the teachers are doing is different now during the course of the day. Parent and guardian choice confirmation data is intended to be intact for the rest of the 2020-2021 school year. We realize that there may be families that will want to change their minds. As with any year, if a family wants to change their mind regarding placement with a certain teacher, it is usually done on a space availability basis. So that is we'll continue with the same process. If there is a desire to change, if it can be accommodated at the site or with the teacher, that might be something that is possible. But if it cannot be accommodated based upon space and current conditions, it might be necessary to have a different teacher or even to have a different school site, with the understanding that the following year, your student returns to their home school. Next slide, please. It's also important for us to understand that there will be instructional implications for the shift into hybrid and also keeping students on remote. Remote learning schedules could be shifted to PM sessions if the teacher is teaching live in the morning in person for the AM sessions. Academics must also be balanced with the important need to address social and emotional learning and to be able to allow students to have time for the social interaction and connection with each other. Our time is indeed limited with our students, and yet there is so much that we want to be able to do with them during the time that we have. And we know that with our students being isolated now since March, that there is great need for them to connect with each other and to experience in person as much of a normal environment as they possibly can, albeit they will be spaced apart, they will be wearing masks, so it will still feel and look differently, but the need for social interaction is still present. Just like when we shifted from in-person instruction, the way we'd always done it, into remote learning in the spring, we are now in full remote learning. And over the past couple of months, we're very proud of the ability that our staff has demonstrated in meeting the needs of the students. Although we realize it doesn't work well for every student, they've done a fantastic job. But that took time to get to this point. So with that in mind, as we transition now into hybrid with remote, this new type of instructional schedule, we need to remember that this has never been done before. So even with careful planning, it is going to take time and we'll need to continue to adjust as we go. So the need for grace and flexibility with our teachers and also with our students and families will continue to be very important. Family support is also essential. Students will still have asynchronous or independent work that they need to complete at home. And that will be true whether they are in the hybrid or the at-home learning model. So that will still change. We will ask our students to come to school, most likely with their Chromebooks, and we will ask our families to help ensure that those Chromebooks are fully charged when students bring them to school. The other thing that we need to just be prepared for is that the amount of time for teacher-directed lessons that are provided remotely will decrease as teachers are also teaching in person. Just as the amount of time that teachers are teaching with our students in person decreases as compared to a typical school day. We don't have any extra teachers, nor do we have the funds to be able to hire extra teachers to offset some of that and to completely separate the recent changes that have been indicated through the last parent choice confirmation form would require massive disruptions to our entire system if every single child would be moved. So we have to realize that there are some trade-offs that we make. And so part of that is understanding that the amount of time spent on instruction, as we've known it in remote, is going to look and feel differently. Students who are isolating or quarantining will still be supported if they are hybrid or remote, but the instructional time that they may attend class may be adjusted for that short window of time. The amount of content that is typically covered in a school year, as we have experienced even this year, will be adjusted to reflect essential learning standards. There is no way in a remote environment that every single standard that would typically be covered can be attended to in the same way that it could be if students were attending school in person full-time. Next slide, please. So a couple of the logistics for the hybrid model is that our sites, as I stated earlier, are now reviewing the grade level data, and they're doing that in teacher teams along with the principal. But some general guidelines in terms of what to expect if you send your student to school in the hybrid model is that if your student is in transitional kindergarten or kindergarten, they will have 150 minutes in class, be it in the morning or the afternoon. And then they would have the remaining time of 30 minutes to do remote instruction at home. For our 1st through 5th grade students, they will be attending school on Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday, either in the AM or the PM, and they will also have the 165 minutes in class instruction with the remaining remote minutes in order to equal the total amount of minutes deemed necessary by SB 98. And as well for our at-home students, they will continue to engage in the synchronous time with their teachers as they're doing now, but that time may be decreased because the teachers are also teaching the hybrid classrooms at the same time. We just feel like it's very important that we're very upfront about this, as this is the current reality that we are facing right now. Next slide, please. Finally, I wanted to let you know of some of the planning that has taken place. As you know, you have received the survey form, you've completed that. Right now, our site administration and staff are reviewing the data to think about the best models to support every single student at their campus, whether they are at home or in person. And this week, we are implementing employee engagement and community input strategies, such as this evening. And last evening, we held an employee town hall for elementary staff. Next week, you will have parent-teacher conferences. So your student will continue on remote, and those conferences will be held virtually. please know that your teachers may not be able to tell you the exact placement of your student at the conferences next week because we are still finalizing those details. In the weeks of the remaining weeks of December, the sites will finalize their plans. They will submit them to us, and they will determine the student placement and the reopening logistics. And then in December, you would be notified of student placement in either the AM or PM sessions or any other changes that might be made. As well, please be assured that all staff, including our employees, certificated and classified, and our families and students will have access to training for our site-specific protocols before students return to school in January. And then hopefully we see all of our students back, those who have selected hybrid in class at the very beginning of January, and those who have selected remote, we see them in class as well on January 4th, but we see them remotely. So on that note, I'll pass it back to Dr. Haglund, who I think will be taking the next couple of slides. Thank you.
Actually, Mike Williams, I think, is going to take the next two.
Thank you,
Okay.
Mike.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you, Pleasanton families, for allowing me to give you an update of where we are as it relates to our human resources department. First, I'd like to let you know the district is appreciative of our November 5th negotiation session we had with the Association of Pleasanton Teachers. We felt that there was a lot of progress made during that time, but unfortunately, we do not have any dates scheduled moving forward. We would like to continue working collaboratively with APT. Though we are passing language back and forth, it is important for us to get to the table so we can hopefully iron out some of this needed language so we can move forward in a successful manner so our students can return come this January. The district is open to meet and negotiate any date and time so that we can successfully move forward. Our focus will be to iron out agreements as it relates to our current version 17 as produced by the Alameda County Department of Health guidelines. We also need to finalize some items as it relates to personal protective equipment to make sure that all employees and students are safe when they are returning to campus in January. CSEA has offered 2 dates and we are continuing to negotiate with them, focusing on November 17th and December 8th. Similar to APT, we'll be working on language as it relates to personal protective equipment and focusing on the guidelines by Alameda County Health Department. Next slide, please. So linked here is our 2 agreed upon MOUs. The APT MOU was agreed to on August 12th, where we did discuss what our full remote option looks like, our transition to partial return, in addition to a full return. Again, that the MOUs do highlight safety mitigation and PPE, personal protective equipment, but there are still, like I mentioned, some details we still need to iron out for return. And the CSCA MOU was also agreed to in August on the 26th, where the focus was safety, PPE, and the process for calling staff to work. Highlighted in the APT MOU, it requires a 10-day notification for return to the site with a 3-day preparation days for that transition, whereas CSCA has a 48-hour notice for having them return to the site. I believe it returns back to you. Thank you for the opportunity.
So there are several factors that are still at play, many of which have already been discussed a little bit, but I want to make sure that we hit on them once more before we go to questions. First is that we are continuing to monitor the data through the Alameda County Health Department, and we will continue to do so closer to the holidays. And I can answer several questions that are in the Q&A by simply saying that if the data does not support a safe reopening of schools as we get closer to January, we certainly are not going to do something that is not safe. So please rest assured that we will watch the data, we will respond to the data, and be responsive to the data. Also, Dr. Woodward talked about the school-specific scheduling that's taking place, which is actually something that I'm very excited about. I truly believe, as a superintendent, but only because I was a teacher first, that the best decisions for kids are always made when they're made the closest to where the learning occurs, which is in the classroom. And so we really wanted to give the flexibility to the site staff to work out and collaborate together and come up with a schedule/program that makes sense for them and their students and families. I know that the principals have engaged parents in conversations, copies, online copies and surveys, and we appreciate all of your input. But because we are wanting those decisions, programmatic decisions, to be made as close to the kids as possible, it's important that you direct the questions that you might have about that program to your principals so that they can address it as it's unique to each school site. We do have procurement, deployment, and professional development issues relating to both the new technologies that Mr. Sheikh Oslami talked about, and also the risk mitigation strategies that Mr. Dialazzo talked about. And so many of those things have already been procured. We're in the process of deploying them, but there are professional development needs that we need to get out there, both to staff, but also to students and parents. As Mike just mentioned, there are ongoing negotiations with our labor unions as they work through the impact and effect of the guidance that's released by the county health department. And you can understand how complex that is, given that we're now on version 17 of the guidance. And so that those conversations are certainly ongoing. And then we have to respond to potential leave requests and ensure that we have a sufficient supply of substitute teachers if those are needed. Just like a parent has a need to respond to personal health needs that are unique to their own home, many of our teachers and other staff members have similar issues, and we'll need to work with them to accommodate them as best as we possibly can. It's the right thing to do for our people, just like it's the right thing to do for our families. And then I just want to reemphasize one last thing that Mr. Dialazzo talked about, and that's related to the upcoming travel and the holidays. And I do encourage you to read the updated travel guidance from the Alameda County Public Health Department. We were only able to touch on it tonight, but as I was speaking to the city council members today in our liaison meeting, the safe reopening of schools is not just about what occurs on a school campus. It's about what occurs in a family's home and what occurs in the community. And if we want to do this, if we want to open schools safely and keep them open, then we as a community need to think about doing some things differently. Even though we have rights to not wear masks if we don't want to, that's not a good decision with regards to community safety in such a way that would keep schools open. Do we have a right to travel? Absolutely we do. But we need to think about it from a public health perspective specific to our community. If we don't all work together, this is not going to last. So it's a plea for me to you as a father and as your superintendent that we've got to make decisions that might be uncomfortable, but are in the best interest of the larger community. And I implore you to think about it that way. All right, it's time for us to move on to questions. We have lots of questions there. We will certainly not have time to get through all of them, which is why Patrick initiated the vote up opportunity. And so a couple things, Patrick, you can go to the next slide if you like, so we can get off of that. A couple of things. I'm not going to be reading comments. It's kind of like Jeopardy as we think about Alex Trebek and his passing. We asked for questions, not statements. And so I will read questions and I will read questions once. So if the question is repeated, I'm not going to repeat it a second time. And so hopefully everybody's got their papers and pens out and they can get their answers that they're looking for. So the first question is, and I'm going to put my glasses on because this is really little. If Alameda County is back in the red zone, will the plan remain to open in January? Mr. Dialazzo, do you want to speak to that?
Yeah, so as I talked about in my slide regarding the COVID dashboard from Alameda County, we're in the orange zone at this point, which is tier 3. Should we shift back to tier 2, which is the red zone? The information in the red zone for Alameda County actually still allows for schools to reopen. Now, I want to go back to what Dr. Haglund said. We're going to reopen only if it's safe. So the red zone change could have some impact in terms of our plans for January, but really we're looking at all the other metrics and the preparedness. But the change in red zone in and of itself for schools, schools are still allowed to reopen.
Thank you, Ed. We are opening right after the holidays. Isn't it better to wait for a couple of weeks, considering some people might be traveling over the holidays? Ed, you already talked about that a little bit. Do you want to add anything?
No, I think you said it well, Dr. Haglund. I mean, we're all in this together. And so for those of you who may have joined in late, there are a couple of links in the presentation regarding holiday travel. So if you do choose to travel, there are some safety precautions that you may want to read. Again, thinking about where you're going, is there a higher risk? Who are you traveling with? There's all kinds of questions that you should really ask yourself. And then again, the recommendation from Alameda County Public Health is to avoid travel during the holidays. If you choose to travel, especially outside of the Bay Area, there's a strong recommendation for self-quarantining. So that's the 14-day quarantine. That's before you go back into your regular activities, specifically kids returning to school or staff returning to work. There's a strong recommendation for a 14-day self-quarantine. But PUSD is not mandating a quarantine. We're following Alameda County and the 10 counties in the Bay Area who are all on the same page by imposing a self-quarantine for 14 days should you travel.
And the reality is that not everybody will travel. And so, this idea that we need to hold off because some might, it is true that some might. And I'm imploring everyone who does to read the county guidance and try to implement the guidance that they give you. There's some very good structural limitations that you can put upon yourself that will keep you and your family in a safer space. Next question. Just answered that one. Okay. Once you've shared the plan, will I have the opportunity to change my choice from remote to hybrid? Dr. Woodward.
So as we indicated on the form that was recently sent out, decisions are being made right now based upon that data. So those are the decisions that are being made right now. The intention was to capture a commitment for the entire year. And so our preference is that you stay with those decisions. Changing a plan could result, as I stated before, in it could result in the need for placement in another class or in another program. Yeah. So I would just say that as much as possible, we would advocate that parents remain with the choice that they selected.
Thank you. Next question. If a portion of students, even a majority, need to or want to stay remote, why is the decision being made to degrade the educational offering for both those students and the ones who need or want to be back on campus? In other words, why fix what isn't broken for a lot of families? Dr. Woodward?
Sure. We were very strategic at the beginning of the year in placing our remote students together. Having said that, many students in those classrooms, the data has shifted. So it might be possible that there might be, say, a class of 24. There could be 15 students that want to stay in that class remotely. There's also students that the remaining difference, the 9, would like to come back, or the data could be vice versa. And so given that, we need to allow for the students who want to come back time to be devoted to them in person, and then time to be devoted to your students who are at home in the remote instruction, because we do not have any additional staff. We work with the staff that we have, And we're trying to keep all of our students at the schools where they are and whenever possible with the teachers. That's not to say that some shifts might not occur. It might be possible to create some entirely remote classes if the data works out that way at the school site. But that also means that other students are then being transitioned to other teachers. So it is very complicated. It is just the current state that we're in right now. So we're trying to make the best decisions to support the student needs. And that is why our principals are working with teachers to try to find the best solutions to minimize disruption and to ensure that every student receives a quality instructional program, although we know it will look different than what has been in place so far this year.
So Dr. Woodward, if I can just ask a clarifying question so we can be very specific. I think you've said it more than one time, but the class teachers may change based on the requests at each school and each grade level, correct?
That's correct, Dr. Haglund.
Okay, so there's a lot of questions. I'm going to skip the rest of those that relate to that same issue. Another question, do you watch the reports or rates spreading faster in areas where schools have opened? Does this affect your decision? With numbers going up across the country, are you considering delaying the reopening date? So I'll answer that question, then Ed, you can jump in if you want to. First of all, yes, absolutely. We're watching all of the information that comes in from multiple sources. Not news sources, more scholarly research effort. So I was watching a press conference today that included information from a study that's being done at Johns Hopkins that's looking specifically at school reopenings and whether or not there were spikes in the virus either by adults or children in areas that reopened schools versus areas that didn't reopen schools. And so there's really, really interesting data coming about. And that's one of the reasons why the health departments are saying, look, we have to weigh the consequences of opening versus the consequences of not opening, because there are consequences of not opening as well. We're seeing increased depression and isolation. Back in Boston, there was a press conference where the Pediatrics Association said that on average, students have gained 20 pounds. These are elementary age students have gained 20 pounds since March on average. That has serious health implications because they're not out and about. And so, yes, it's a complicated mix of decisions that we're having to wrestle with. And yes, we're looking at all of the data, absolutely. So if it is unsafe, we've already said we will not be reopening. But no, we're not going to respond to news or political stories or whatever. This is about the science and the research that's being conducted around the disease. Next question. Ed, did you want to add anything to that?
No, sir, that was, you said it well. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. If the disease has a 2-week incubation period, I think we already did that one about starting after the break. Let's go to the next question. What's the classroom experience going to be like for the kids? Are they going to have to wear masks all day, considering they are only first graders? Are they going to be able to interact with other kids? Are they going to be able to have recess time? Or is it going to be a short day or a full schedule? So that's kind of a cross between Ed and Janelle. So we'll see who wants to start.
I'll go ahead and start. And Janelle, if you would, please pick up the rest of it. So yeah, masks are required for all students and staff. So the face coverings are part of the day. So we've had some experience already with our small cohort supervision program. Seeing our youngest learners with masks on and being able to keep their masks on for the majority of the day, for all of the day. So in terms of moving around in the classroom, yes, they're free to move. The idea of the small cohort, and now when we reopen their classroom cohort, it doesn't mean kids, kind of sit in their seats the whole day. They will be able to move around and do the instructional work that they need to do in order to do so. But because they are in small cohorts and keeping them in those classrooms really helps us to mitigate the risk, the greater risk, if we were to kind of mix the kids. But yes, masks are required for the day, and I'll let Janelle answer the rest of the question.
Thank you so much, Mr. D'Alazzo. I also saw a question in the chat about whether or not face shields were required. And we are not requiring face shields because students can wear the masks.
Yeah, face shields are an alternative for students who may not be able to wear a mask. That's allowable by Alameda County Public Health. But the mask is the recommended face covering. But we know that maybe some kids may not be able to, so they are able to wear a face shield. But the face shield has to have a cloth draping underneath that needs to be tucked in to the child's shirt. So that's in the public health document that I referenced in the PowerPoint or the slide deck. And please look at the section on masks and face coverings and face shields.
Thank you. Dr. Haglund, would you repeat the part of the question that I meant to answer, please?
I can't because I already marked it done. Sorry.
Okay.
I apologize. Working too fast. Let me see if I can find it in the answered section. No, I'm sorry. We're going to need to go on. Okay. Ed, why is the school district proposing bringing kids back to class when it is in direct opposition to the Alameda County Public Health Department website guidelines, which require gatherings of stable groups of no more than 3 households and no more than 20 people?
I don't have that particular guideline committed to memory. I can tell you, I guess the way to answer this question is there are multiple different guidelines for different situations. So there is a guideline from public health on gatherings. There's guidelines on youth sports, for example, on childcare, local business activities. There are guidelines for that. We're following the school reopening guidelines. And the school reopening guidelines, based on the metrics that I mentioned earlier in the presentation, allows for school districts in the county to reopen. So I guess I would answer it that way, that we are following those recommendations. And again, we talked about the mitigation of risk of the spread of the virus and implementing all of the required components of that reopening plan helps us to, again, come to that conclusion of reopening. Sorry, I don't have the specifics of that particular document, but the document we're following for schools is the school reopening guidelines.
Yeah, I think that's kind of the key answer to the question is the Public Health Department guidance for school is different than the guidance for other activities in the community. And so it's important that you look at their school-related guidance, which is what we do as well.
Dr. Haglund, we've been able to answer the second part to that question. Would it be okay if I were to address it right now?
Sure.
Thank you. So the question was, are students going to be able to interact with other students, or are they going to have a recess time? And so the interaction does need to be limited to the cohorts. If there is any interaction outside of their cohorts, it should be done remotely if it's during the school day. In addition, are students going to have recess time? Recess time will be optional because students are there for a limited amount of time. Obviously, there need to be scheduled times for bathroom breaks, but if recess is taken, the students will need to play together with their cohort. There will be designated areas of the playground for specific cohorts and time scheduled for those cohorts to go out. And then any equipment such as playground equipment that would require cleaning, we're not going to be using that. But within a cohort, the students would be able to share things like balls or equipments, but they may not participate in play with other cohorts. And then is it going to be a short day or a full schedule? We have a board adopted AM/PM model, so the day is shorter. For transitional kindergarten and kindergarten students, the amount of time spent in person would be 150 minutes. And for our students in grades 1st grade through 5th grade, the amount of time spent on the campus would be 165 minutes.
All right, thank you. Next question, and we're not going to get to all these questions, so I'm trying to look through to see if there's some that we haven't already touched on. Um, so, Mr. Dialazzo, if a teacher suspects a child has a persistent cough or sneeze or other cold symptoms, do teachers have a way to immediately quarantine the child and have their parents called? What's the procedure and resources available to the teacher?
Yeah, it's a great question. So the way I would answer it is first, students should follow the or complete the daily health screening prior to coming to school. And so hopefully we can have students stay home should they have any illnesses or feel ill or have a fever. The questions on that questionnaire should help guide that conversation even prior to coming to school. Now, to answer the question, should a student come to school, feel fine in the morning and then feel ill during the day? We do have procedures that teachers can employ right away. They would notify the office to have the student go into what we're calling an isolation room or a sick room. Some of these rooms, I'll call it a room, are actually outdoors. They are in a tent, but we want to make sure that that student is isolated who's showing symptoms or is feeling ill. Yes, a teacher has the authority to say that, no, we need to send the student home because I'm seeing the symptoms. Once a student goes into the area, typically close to the main office, the isolation room or sick room, then we will call parents and make sure that parents pick up their child. And then we would follow or provide a letter that we're calling a isolation letter, which is from Alameda County Public Health that provides guidelines for students who have symptoms. And so those students would then isolate for 10 days until their fever is down or they no longer have symptoms. And then we can discuss with the school site administrators whether students can return, when they should return after that 10-day isolation period or within that 10-day isolation period. So I'll leave it with the guidelines in the public health document has that specific scenario that question is referencing and what the procedures are for the school site should that happen. But yes, teachers have the authority to send the student home should they have symptoms.
Okay, very good. And with that, I think we're going to go ahead and close it down. We're already 10 minutes beyond our time. We have a bunch of questions that we will continue to read through and provide responses to. And as we do, we'll be able to share those answers with you via the district's website. So thanks everyone for your willingness to participate in our town hall meeting and for asking great questions. We appreciate your ongoing collaboration and support, and we will get back together with you again sometime very soon. Thank you again. Oh, wait, don't go. There's an activity left, huh, Dr. Woodward?
Yes, there is, Dr. Hagman. Maybe we could just get it started and then share the thought exchange. And then parents we can leave it open for a day or two, and then we can review the thinking. So this is a crowdsourcing platform. We've used it before. It's called Thought Exchange. And our question for you this evening is, what comes to mind as you think about schools reopening as a parent or a guardian? And so if you'd like to join, you can use the QR code on your phone and you can scan that, or you can go to tejoin.com and use the code 649-360-302 to participate. We ask that you spend 30 seconds to a minute on the thought exchange, that you share your thoughts, keep them away from people or specific sites, but do let us know what your current thinking is if it's different from what you may have put in the Q&A. And then you'll have the opportunity to read through other people's thoughts and rate those thoughts. We do look at this, and it is important to us, just as we look at the questions in the Q&A, and it helps us to know better how to plan and how to respond as we move forward in this journey. Again, thank you everybody for being a part of this night. We do appreciate your partnership.
Have a good night, everybody.